Welcome to Wine and Chill, your home for all things millennial adulting and entertainment law shenanigans. I'm Stephanie, and today, instead of our usual entertainment law tea time, we are going to do a video on music royalties explained, which I promised you guys a few weeks ago in the Kanye part 2 video. So I think this is going to be 2 parts. I want to make sure this is a thorough rundown of everything. Music royalties, unfortunately, were never drafted or created in a way to make it easy for artists. So I want this to be easy for all of you. If you're new to my channel, I am former entertainment attorney. I now am a tech attorney. Entertainment is a lot of commotion, so tech is a bit calmer. So with that being said, a quick disclaimer: by watching this video, you understand that I am not your attorney and this is for entertainment purposes only, and you acknowledge that you have read the full disclaimer down below in the description box. Also, for those of you who haven't seen it, I think I've used it once before. My best friend made me this wine glass, so shout out to Rachel. You guys should check out her YouTube channel for all things sustainability at Wasteless Oasis. Oh, it's a tongue twister. At Wasteless Oasis. I'll link it down below in the description. Thank you, boo. All right, so into our royalties breakdown. So, royalties, definition, we're gonna start with that. Part 1 is going to be laying the foundation, and as usual, feel free to leave me any questions in the comments and I will try to get to most of them. Royalties are the money that you're paid from your copyrighted portion of the song. So before we get into the 4 types of royalties, I think it'd be really helpful to lay the foundation of copyright and particularly how that works with music. So in an actual song, people will say there's technically 3 potential copyrights. So you have the underlying composition, so the beat, so all of like the musical notes, how the beat drops, things of that nature. That is one copyright in itself. So for example, there are lawsuits on just the beats of songs being used in other songs. The famous song, Blurred Lines, that lawsuit between the estate of Marvin Gaye and then Robin Thicke and Pharrell, that was one that we talked about when I was in law school, and it was like highly contested. And in the end, Marvin Gaye's estate actually won because they proved that the song Blurred Lines took the parts of the musical composition and used it in Blurred Lines without, asking permission, paying for it. Obviously, that's usually what it comes down to, and things of that nature. So people often get confused when you copyright the underlying music. So let's do something very simple. Happy birthday, for example. Happy birthday is set to a series of notes. You're copyrighting the actual music, and that itself, if you use a portion of that music, which that whole lawsuit is not about, oh, Blurred Line sounds exactly like Marvin Gaye's song. No, the whole lawsuit is about there is a certain section of the song which Marvin Gaye's estate argued that, hey, that section, you used it and made Blurred Lines, and people are now confused between your Blurred Line song and my song. And by we all know Marvin Gaye passed away many years ago. His estate still has his copyright intact. So that's one copyright, so the underlying composition. The second is the actual songwriting. So songwriters get paid a lot of money. People usually don't realize this. You can make a full living off of being a songwriter. Neo is a very famous songwriter. Candy is also a very famous songwriter, formerly of Escape and on Real Housewives of Atlanta. These people, they write songs for others. Sometimes they write them for themselves, but they have, most likely, most of them do own the copyright to the actual lyrics. So people, whenever you do a cover, you technically have to pay a licensing fee to whoever wrote the lyrics. You can always change the underlying composition of a song. There are so many songs that have been done so many different ways, but once you take the lyrics are forever owed. You always have to pay the licensing fee to the songwriter. So that's the second one. And then the third copyright that some people kind of get confused about, don't talk about, is the master recording itself. People always say masters, that's what they're talking about. The master recording is a mix of the underlying composition coupled with the actual songwriting. So the lyrics plus the underlying composition equals the master recording. So the master recording itself is the third copyright, usually owned by the label or owned by the independent artist, depending on the contracts that you signed. So those are the 3 copyrights that are possible, which you need that foundational understanding before we get into the 4 types of music royalties, because they interplay differently between the copyrights. Okay, so with copyrights, you have your 3 potential copyrights in the actual song itself, in the full recording. And then a lot of people get a little bit tripped up. How does copyright work? How do you get a copyright? Copyrights are inherent to the work themselves. So people often ask, oh, how do I get a copyright? Once you create a work in a fixed form, you have a copyright. You don't have to tell anybody. So for example, if I, which obviously this did not happen, if I wrote the song Happy Birthday, the minute I wrote the song and I wrote it on paper and I wrote the lyrics down, all those lyrics, there's a copyright there. Because remember, there's 3 types when we're talking about music. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna write the music composition, I'm gonna write the sheet music to it. Okay, now I have a copyright to the sheet music and the lyrics, so I have 2 copyrights now. And then I'm gonna go in the studio and I recorded Happy Birthday. Now I have the recording, which is a copyright in itself for that performance. So I have the recording for both together is my copyright. The lyrics, I have a copyright, hypothetically, because obviously that song has been around since way back when. And then for the underlying composition, I would inherently have the copyright because it's fixed. It's fixed on the sheet of paper. It's fixed, you know, in the sound recording. I fixed it on a CD. It's just in a fixed form. If I hum, that's not fixed anywhere. I hummed it. I didn't do anything with it. It's not captured in anything. Okay, so you inherently have a copyright. You don't have to tell anybody. Well, what are people talking about? How do you get a copyright? You can register your copyright with the United States Copyright Office, which the United States Copyright Office does suggest. In my opinion, you shouldn't spend money when you don't need to spend money. If you are like just starting, the best way, when you see copyright disputes in lawsuits, people saying like, hey, I made that song first. It comes up a lot with books, actually. You'll see someone write a book and you see someone else write a book, and the first person will say, you stole my idea, you stole my copyrighted work, you copied my book. And the other person will say, I never read your book, I don't know what you're talking about. The fastest way to fix that, once you publish something, then you have a timestamp. So in terms of music, say you're like, okay, I don't want to pay the filing fee with the Copyright Office because, you know, for whatever reason, you don't want to spend money, and you shouldn't spend money unless you are ready for that step. Once you put it on SoundCloud, once you put it on YouTube, it's out in the public. If someone else copies your thing a month later, 2 months later, you can sue them and say, hey, see my timestamp? It says I uploaded it on this day at this time. Also, I recorded it way before when, and then you have a stronger claim. But the United States Copyright Office does strongly suggest people to copyright things to avoid such disputes. It does give you a stronger claim, so that way you're not having he said, she said. There are a lot of lawsuits about this where people didn't register their work. And then it's like, oh, well, is it possible that someone could have stole your idea if like you live in Utah and they live in Miami? How would they have known? And it gets into like nitty gritty nonsense. So you can register it. It's up to you. All right. So like I mentioned in the beginning, there are 4 types of royalties when it comes to music. I'm going to read them here. We have synchronization, mechanical royalties. I have extensive notes. Public performance, and print royalties. So we will go through the 4, and then we're gonna focus either the later part of this video or in part 2 about mechanical and performance royalties, because most people care about streaming. Like, how much money am I gonna get from streaming my music? And those only invoke 2, mechanical and performance. So synchronization royalties, sync licenses, give the license holder, so whoever has entered into the agreement, they have the right to use that copyrighted music. So depending which part we talked about above, basically attached to any type of like moving film. So film, TV, video games, online streaming, advertisements, commercials, anything attached to online media goes with synchronization. Say your song is a moderate hit and you're like, okay, it did okay, I guess, whatever. And but you do a work for hire agreement. So work for hire is something we talked about in the Kanye video. Most artists are under work for hire agreements that they don't realize that they're under, which is why you have to read your contracts and make sure you get a good reputable attorney. If you sign away your sync rights, basically what will happen is the label will license out your music for commercials, which is great and can actually get you a lot of money. But if you don't own those rights, then you're not getting anything. So like, for example, those, what's the thing? I'm a basketball girl. Oh, football. Super Bowl. I was like, what is that thing called? I'm a basketball girl. Football is too slow for me. But the Super Bowl ads usually have music in them. The actual copyright owner of the sync rights gets paid a lot of money to sync their music to those Super Bowl ads, because the Super Bowl ads, they pay millions of dollars to get those placements. So that's what sync rights are. So mechanical royalties are something you'll see a lot of people talking about. We are going to talk about mechanical royalties and public performance royalties the most. Mechanical, however, used to be a very simple process and is now somewhat outdated, but is still used. It's complicated, so we're going to get into it. Mechanical royalties, you get those through physical or digital reproduction of your copyrighted song. So physical reproduction back in the day, and even now, like I guess some people buy CDs, are through CDs. I live in New York. I don't have a car, so I have no CD player. Through CDs, and then also distribution. So originally it was just CDs, and the rate that you got was very easy math, easy enough for my math challenge self to do, which the United States Copyright Office currently has the rate at 9.5 cents for songs under 5 minutes. So that means whoever has the copyright, whether it's the artist or the record label, they get 9.5 cents for each CD made. So you can run that math on anyone's album sales, which you can figure out how much whoever owned the copyright, how much they got from those album sales. That doesn't mean the artist got that, because the artist most likely, we'll get into that later, the record label probably cut into that and was like, okay, that's how much we are all making, and I will then get 80% and I'll give you 20%, which is actually really high. Most record labels take like 90-ish% and give the artist about 10%. So keeping in order though, so with the mechanical royalties, the way that it works, it's from CDs. So anything printed, so it's the printing of the actual, think of mechanical royalties as you have the song and now you have it in some type of form where you can access the song on demand. So that's a CD, a vinyl, or it also works with streaming. So iTunes, when you download something from iTunes, that's technically a mechanical royalty that whoever the copyright holder is incurring. So they're going to get a royalty on that. It's on-demand use of the song. So things that would not count, and that we're going to talk about later, Pandora, for example. I can't go into Pandora and type in blurred lines, since we're talking about blurred lines. I can't type in blurred lines in Pandora and blurred lines automatically pop up. That's not how Pandora works, because it's not on demand, which is different. So they call them interactive songs. So anything that you can choose your song is interactive, which will fall under a mechanical license. Okay, so with mechanical royalties, it used to be very easy to figure out the math behind mechanical royalties, because the math was set by the US Copyright Office and is still set by them. So basically, for every song under 5 minutes, the copyright owner, remember the copyright owner, if you are assigned to a label, you are likely not the copyright owner of the song. You have to read your contract and get an attorney to also help you with that, is at 9.5 cents per song. So this is like pretty easy math. Even I can figure this out, because y'all know I'm highly math challenged. And that's where it is now. Remember, this is for some streaming. So for iTunes, you can figure out the person, like how many iTunes downloads they have times 9.5, and then do that math there. But then you'd have to know how much of the copyright is theirs, because we'll get into later the split with the label, how much the label owns versus how much you, the artist, own when you're assigned to the label. That's completely negotiated between you and the label. There is no standard to that. So as we saw with Kanye's contracts, certain years he got 12%, certain years he got 14% of his royalties. That's something he negotiated with the label. So it's gonna come from the original number. All right, so next you have public performance royalties. So public performance royalties are what most people are familiar with. You get those when the song is performed, played, or streamed in public, recorded, anything like that. So this basically is gonna include anytime you hear a song. So think live concerts, restaurants, bars, Starbucks, streaming services. That's the main one people wanna know. All of that is public performance. Technically, with some streaming services, Spotify is a good example of this, there is a public performance in the song, but there's also mechanical royalty in the song as well. There's both, because on Spotify, I can go in there and type in Toast by Coffee and hear the song on demand. Remember, if that's interactive, which is falls in the definition of mechanical. Spotify specifically, and why you see Taylor Swift and a lot of other artists got into, huge legal battles with Spotify and refused for a long time to put their music on there, is the way they have calculated the amount. It's not the 9.5 cents the United States Copyright Office has deemed for mechanical royalties, because it's mechanical and it's public performance. Streaming platforms are allowed to set the rates with public performance. They're not allowed to set the rates with mechanical. Mechanical has to stay at 9.5 cents, but because it's both, it's a mix of both, they've been allowed to set the rates, which the way they do that math, wow. That's something that I'm allowing y'all to Google how to get there, and maybe if I drink enough wine, we can figure it out together. But that math has been a huge point of contention for a lot of artists, because they're basically 9.5 cents sounds low, but it's not that bad. If you sell 1 million albums, like actual copies, you would just multiply that times 9.5 cents. And that's how you'd figure out how much money, if you were the complete copyright holder. If you're under a label, you're not the complete copyright holder, which is why you see all the disputes. Whoever owns the masters, that's the complete copyright holder. That's how much money you'd make. That simple. When you're on these streaming services, the amount of streams is in the billions now. As the streaming platform, of course, they don't want to do 9.5 cents. That would be so high. Spotify's current split, as of January 2019, Spotify reports that it pays out between, you ready for this? 0.00331 and 0.00437 cents per stream to rights holders. Do you see why there's this commotion? Do you see why people are arguing about putting their things on Spotify? So you're going from 9.5 cents for mechanical anytime you sell the actual embodiment of the copy, to now with streaming, Spotify is paying out such low numbers. And you see why you see why the artists don't like it, why they're arguing, and why, quite frankly, why Taylor Swift for years refused to put her music on Spotify. What is the purpose of that? You know how many streams you would have to get? Not y'all. I'm going to read the numbers again, so that way you lovely people who are 1,000 times better at math than me can do the math. So let's go on the high end. We're going to calculate Kanye West, for example, since we've already looked at his contract. Let's say he's on the high end, which most likely he's on Spotify. He'd be on the high end if he owned his masters, which he doesn't, at 0.00437 cents. So you would take that number, 0.00437, multiplied by however many streams he has, and that would get you to how much whoever owns his masters is making off of streaming. Which, y'all can do the math and let me know the exact number. It's not much. It's not much. And you know how Spotify makes money, which is very interesting? Spotify makes money through ads. All these things make money through ad revenue. Ad revenue makes the US go around. And to democratize and to make it more fair, the suggestion is often, okay, well, why don't you share the ad revenue with the artist? But clearly that's not something they're interested in. So that's that, and that's why you have all these commotion and these arguments. All right. So in public performance, you also have two sets of licensing. You have the songwriting and the publishing. So we're going to get into that. Again, as a songwriter, a lot of people underplay, or not a lot of people. Sometimes people underplay the importance of the songwriter, but the songwriter actually is the person who in the end is okay and actually usually does financially better for themselves in life, is usually the songwriter, because the songwriter, every time the song gets played, they're getting paid. The songwriter is not subject to the record label and subject to all these fees. They're not subject to when the artist makes the music video, and everything from the music video is actually charged to the artist from their set of royalties. The songwriter doesn't have any business with that. The songwriter writes the song, usually, most songwriters, we're gonna get into split sheets. Most songwriters 100% own the lyrics to a song. They own the song and they just go about their business, which is why you have a lot of songwriters that stay in the game for years, and people never realize that's who in the end turns out better. So if you're thinking about it, and you're between songwriting and being behind the scenes or in front of the stage, the person behind the scenes usually has more longevity to their career. And that's because the music industry, as I said a million times, is highly predatory towards musicians and towards artists. All right, so the fourth type of music royalty and the last type is print. So print is something you don't really hear talked a lot about. Basically, this type of royalty is for copyrighted music that's transcribed into sheet music. So any of you that played piano, violin, I played both when I was younger. Sheet music is like a big thing when you play like an instrument. So like if you were in band, like all of that, the school is paying a licensing fee to use all of that. Like if you did like after school program, whatever. So there's not, it's usually classical music is most of the value with that, composers, things of that nature. It's not as highly compensated, like high value as the other two. The big two in today's modern age is mechanical and mostly public performance, because of the way that streaming services have construed their rates. And because technically under public performance, so like a streaming service that's pure public performance and is not mechanical at all, Pandora. Because Pandora, there's no interaction. You can't go in and take the song. You can't go in and type in coffee by Toast and have the song to yourself. So there's no mechanical royalty due. So public performance is the route in which today's modern era has gone, and which has caused a lot of disruption in the music industry that you've seen. Because most record labels can't survive off the public performance royalties either. Which is why some of the big labels are investors in the streaming services. But y'all could look that up, google.com. So, and then as a bonus, there are neighboring rights, which are basically your international plays. All the things that we just talked about, these 4 types of royalties are US specific. So international wise, because there are so many countries and obviously America is not the center of the universe, I'm not too familiar with the international rights. So if you are in a different country, you'd have to look that up separately. And other countries are actually much more protective over IP, privacy, things of that nature. So you'll probably get a better rate, to be honest. All right, so now we are going to talk about who pays out your royalties. That is going to be the PROs, which are the performing rights organizations. In the US, here there are 3: ASCAP, who am I forgetting? BMI and CSAC. So ASCAP, American Society of Composer, Authors, and Publishers. Yes, I'm reading it because I do not have that memorized. BMI, Broadcast Music Incorporated, and CSAC, which is invite only and it's much smaller. So most people have ASCAP or BMI. With that being said, those are the performing rights organizations. So those are your performing rights royalties that we talked about. Mechanical royalties are usually paid out by Harry Fox. So how this works is you just register with whichever organization you'd like, and then they'll pay out the royalties owed to you. When you're signed under the label will register, because technically they will pay out the label what the label is owed, and then the label will pay you out. That's how that works. PROs, basically what they've done is they've entered into hold on. So basically PROs have entered into deals with Starbucks, the radio stations, everywhere that you hear music streamed, Pandora, iTunes, Spotify, all of those, and they are able to collect your royalties for you, because then those places pay it out to ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. They charge them a fee, and then they pay out the copyright owner. So you have to be the copyright owner to have the royalties. So this is also for songwriters as well, which is we're going to get into split sheets next. Thank you guys for tuning in to part 1 of the royalties video. If you haven't already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. So I know we talked a little bit today about songwriters. In part 2, we're going to talk about split sheets, why it's important for songwriters, why you should sign them and negotiate them before you record, as well as the artist and record label relationship when it comes to royalties. And let me know, I did see some comments that people wanted to hear about producer royalties, things of that nature. So let me know if you guys want to hear about that in part 2. So let me know in the comments. All right, thank you guys for tuning in.